In a moment or two. Let me bring the panel up. And there's been a slight amendment to this, so bear with me while I make sure that I get my ducks in a row. I'm going to ask the four members of the panel to come up and join me here. We've got microphones. We'll get a bit of a conversation going, and then we'll open it up to the floor, and you can dive in and ask whatever questions you think are appropriate at that stage. So, unfortunately, for family reasons, Aaron Taylor hasn't been able to join us today. So, Aaron sends his apologies, and we send our best wishes to Aaron. But I'm pleased to say somebody I've known for a very long time, because I went to school with him, has stepped into the breach, and that is a certain Ashley Moore. So Ashley, do you want to grab a pew? You get the pick of the seats. Ashley has a new company called Spatialest, which is a software development company exotically based in Coleraine and Florida, about which more in just a moment. So welcome to Ashley, and thank you very much for coming at short notice. Fionnuala Deane from Dog Ears, which is a children's media company, and she can explain a bit more about that in a moment or two, is with us. So welcome to you. Nuala Murphy, who was my new friend, and we have the whole leadership thing sorted, so Nuala's going to explain that to you in a moment or two. From Moment Health, which is a technology company specialising in mental health intervention, so welcome to you as well. And last but absolutely not least is René Mullin, who's a partner in an architectural practice, but is herself a printmaker and an artist. So welcome to you, René. You've all got microphones? Yes, you've all got microphones. So we've about an hour or thereabouts to tease this out. So I think we'll just dive in and discuss some of these issues amongst ourselves, first of all. And I'm going to pick on, I'm sorry to do this, Nuala, but just because we've already had a little bit of a conversation, I suppose I'm curious just to get your reflection on what Remco was saying there and the challenge of talking. Well, you and I were chatting. You did the chatting. You had a lot more experience of leadership than I have. But that's a whole other story called the BBC. I just do as I'm told. Did it strike a chord with you what our keynote speaker said today? Did it provide that launch pad into the conversation that you were hoping it would?
It did, yeah. I think it presented it in a very sophisticated way, and with the work that I do with a self-organised, volunteer-led network, it's something that we have always concentrated on from the outset, is that leadership is really about enabling other people to lead and enabling other people to bring their best talents and skills to a movement which is Lean in Belfast that empowers women to achieve their ambition. So we looked at who do we have around us that are interested. We captured their passion. What are their skill sets? Where do they want? What else do they want to learn? And then we facilitated that together. So, but we did that, I suppose, based on common sense, as opposed to really following a formal leadership direction.
Yeah. Do you want to say something, and I'll ask actually each of you to do this, do you want to say something about your company, first of all? Just give us some sense of what it is, what it does, who you work with, how long it's been on the go, just so that people have a little thumbnail sketch of where you're coming from as far as your part of the industry is concerned.
Yes, so I am a startup. My company's called Moment Health, and we started out to offer early intervention to women and their families from perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. That journey started about 2 years ago, and we built our first product. It's been live for about a year, and we've helped about 10,000 women, most of them from Northern Ireland. But in that journey and listening to feedback along the way, we've actually become a lot more than that. And we've had a lot of interest from employers because mental health is so critical to the well-being of their staff and productivity. And that's where we're at today. We have our North Star, and for me, I really want anybody who's struggling with a mental health illness to have the opportunity to early intervention. But as a startup who's bootstrapped, you need to find ways in which you can then get to your North Star, and that's the journey I'm on at the moment.
Okay. René, do you want to just give us that little thumbnail sketch about where you're coming from? I know you've got a number of irons in the fire with the architectural practice, but also as an artist and as a printmaker.
Yeah. Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I work within the areas of craft, design, architecture, and visual arts. So I have a kind of broad range of exposure to the creative industries and what's happening. The bread and butter side of my life is basically the architecture side, where our family firm, myself and my husband set up in 2000, is a landscape architecture practice. And within it, there's been a lot of crossover between all the other things that I'm more interested in. But that's the business that I run as a partner. I'm also on the board of Belfast Print Workshop, and at the minute they're 40 years old. They're an institution within the Belfast art scene, and within that we're at a point where we've had to consider our leadership and how we as a board are directing the future of the workshop. The chair of the board is the founder of Belfast Print Workshop, so there's a very interesting kind of approach that we're taking there, which is to assess the legacy and archive aspect of what we're doing, along with building something for the future for printmakers and for Belfast from an arts facility. And in doing that, there's been a lot of reflection from my perspective in terms of how do you make sure that the members of that organisation and the new members of the organisation are going to be engaged, are going to want to be involved, are going to be able to facilitate the future vision that you have for it. So I think I have other businesses as well that I have opened and closed. And I think I've learned a lot from all of those experiences. And I think that this comment that Remco has made about reflecting on where you're going, admitting that you don't know all the answers. I talked about this to Ashley as well, that very often the question's asked, are leaders born or made? And some people feel that they are, and it's a kind of characteristic that appears within an embryo. I completely disagree with that. I think if you ask anyone who's in a leadership role in their early 20s, like I was in a graphic design business in Edinburgh, I had some leadership responsibilities there because I have an inherent ability to feel fear and have courage. And I now look back at that period 20 years later and think, actually, I hadn't a clue what I was doing. But, I think if you ask people, were you a born leader? They will say in 20 years' time, no, I wasn't. I've learned everything I know, and it has evolved and changed. And, 40 years later, 50 years later, 60 years later, what they thought they knew when they were 20 or 25 is completely different.
That's interesting, and we'll maybe develop that through the course of this conversation. It presupposes that as you're developing, you're listening and learning and getting better. We've probably all experienced leaders who are tin-eared, who don't listen and who don't learn, and 20 years on, they're every bit as bad as they were when they started out. So I suppose the question is, the challenge is, how do you avoid that? How do you then help people who are struggling with that? And if you are one of those people, how do you actually realise that you've got it wrong and correct things? So I don't know, maybe Carice might shed a bit of light on that later on as to whether or not you can actually do that. Because you said leadership is a concept you can learn. You're not born a leader, but you can actually learn it. Sometimes people might need to be, really, it's like taking the horse to the water and making the horse drink. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Let's talk to Fionnuala. We had a brief conversation on the way in, and some of the people in the room in the theatre will know some of the product that you've been involved in. But do you want to say something a little bit about your company and the kind of range of work that it does?
Sure. Yep. So I set up Dog Ears in 2010, and we describe ourselves as a children's media company. And our vision statement is that we want to make quality content for kids. It's that simple. So to date, we've done it across a number of different media, which is why we describe ourselves as a media company, not a publishing company or an animation company or just those things. So we make stories for kids and we tell them across different ways. So to date, our most enduring and well-known project to date is Puff and Rock, which is a preschool animated cartoon which we made in partnership with Cartoon Saloon, the 4 times Oscar-nominated studio based in Kilkenny. So from really quickly having that idea, all having young kids and thinking, let's make something interesting. The first idea was to make a book, which is where our name comes from, the idea of well-thumbed and well-worn dog-eared books. And then one day we said, well, maybe we should make a digital book, an app, because apps were all the rage then. And we did that. We made the first kids book app in Ireland, and it went really well for our first project called Miss Rosie Red, and it was on iTunes for over a year in the top 10. We thought, well, maybe we could do animation too. And from that we decided, well, maybe we could set up an animation studio. So that all happened really, really quickly. And then suddenly we had to become employers. We had to figure out animation pipelines. We had to try and employ people from across Europe. So that's really our story. And we finished our second series in 2016. And since then now we have really thought, what happens next? Because our growth was really quick and really fast.
Yeah, so is the concept of leadership something that you've actually sat down as a company and thought about? Or is it something that has happened and you have adjusted to and you've found yourself dealing with issues rather than setting out to confront issues, if you know what I mean?
It's not something that we thought about in the first instance. When we first set up, we were a group of friends who were having fun. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to stay and live and work here. My background is in publishing, so it was a group of friends. Laura, she worked in kids publishing and kids TV in London, had come back home and wanted to, basically, she'd no work. There were no companies that we could work for that we were interested in what they were doing, so we decided we're going to have to set up our own. And then Jackie worked with me in the previous company they worked with, and then John, who's the fourth director of the company, was running his own creative design business, and we kind of found each other through mutual friends, and John's actually married to my sister, so there was this sort of group of friends, and we thought, well, maybe we should try and do something together. But it happened organically that we found our roles whenever we worked together, and it became apparent that we had different skill sets each. So we didn't consciously make a decision, it just sort of happened, it evolved.
Right, okay. Ashley, a little bit about the company, first of all. People will know you, but they might not know about the company in any great detail.
You described Spatialest as a new company. In fact, we are still a startup. We've been around for 20 years. Well, we were a spin-out company from this university, started by a couple of professors in the university as a consultancy company initially, and then gathered pace, and is now a fully fledged software company. We provide software and solutions to American cities so that they can manage, analyze, and share their property data. For instance, Seattle would be a client of ours. They might have 500,000 houses. There's an incredible amount of information on every one of those houses that has to be pulled together, and we do that by creating a map. And we visualize that data, and that allows them to analyze what's there. They can share that with their citizens through various portals supplied by us, and we will help them generate values for every one of those houses so they can raise tax. So we're in the assessment cycle in the States, and we literally have clients from Seattle to the Florida Keys. We're a small company, head count of 16 or so, based in Corrigan in Florida. And as a company, I would characterize ourselves as innovative and energetic. Leadership is, the badge of leadership is always something I've been slightly uncomfortable with, in a sense that it implies that you're different and away from the rest of the people in the company. You're Steve Jobs, you're the black turtleneck walking about with this grand vision. I don't see it that way. I think there's so much talent and vision in the members of the team. Your job actually is, and what was said at the start, leadership is not management. I'm not sure that's true. I think part of your job is to curate those ideas, that energy that in the team, and formulate that into the best possible option. So I think a lot of those answers are already within the team, and who's to say you can call yourself a leader, but who's to say your ideas are any better than anybody else's? So surely by consulting the people in their team that are much more expert in each individual area, you'll get to a better answer. And yes, at times it can be complicated and it isn't clear, and there's, I think in the software industry we would call it iteration. That really means trial and error. And there's a lot of that goes on. And yes, at times you have to take decisions that not everybody will agree with, but I really believe that the thrust of it comes from the people involved in the company. And It's certainly the case for me personally, because I started off as an investor in this company. I don't have any technical skills really, and then got drawn more and more, and I've become involved and help running the company. So that would be my take on it.
Okay, but at the end of the day, are you the person who makes the final call? If it's this way or that way, and somebody has to decide which way, is that on your shoulders?
That would be right. I guess there has to be a decision-making process, but that I would hope that everybody, when we get to that point, has been fully involved, has had their full say. So it is a very informed decision.
So it's consensual, ideally?
Consensual up till a point. If you can't get overall agreement, there has to be a decision. But I think, and there's members of the team here, and I just hope they don't start barracking me. But
were they the ones who were laughing loudly at the idea of being
probably,
consensual? Right.
A paper dart coming down here in a minute. Yes, I think as long as everybody feels they've had their full say and it's been listened to, a decision is easier to accept than some lofty ideal that's been sprung out of a management course or something like that. Okay,
let's move this on to challenges within the companies that you're involved with, because leadership is about I suppose it's about setting out the stall for the company. It's about having a vision. It's all of those things, but it's also about dealing with difficulties when difficulties arise. So let's. Fionnuala, you're nodding, so I'm going to go to you first on this. And you talked a little bit about the development of the company and the numbers of people involved. I don't want you to give away any trade secrets, and I'm not asking you to get into whole HR revelations, but is there one thing that stands out as a challenge as far as the leadership of your company is concerned? And curious to know what that might be and how you dealt with it.
Absolutely. I mean, we had a situation about 4 years ago after we finished the production of our second series of Puffin Rock, and we thought either we continue to run an animation studio. We had never set up our company to become an animation studio. Are we going to do that? Are we going to service these jobs, essentially? Or should we stop and consolidate and really think about what our next project is going to be? And that was a very hard decision that we had to make, and we came to the conclusion that actually we aren't continuing just to do animation for the sake of those posts, because that's not what inspires us. That's not where our passion was, and that's not what we wanted to do. So we had to take the kind of crazy, brave, reckless, naive decision of, okay, what we'll do is we'll go away and we'll start a really intensive 2-year period of development for new ideas. We're going to stop that. We're going to just go back to our kind of core team, and we're going to see if we can find our inspiration again, because we got so heavily involved in the day-to-day production and the demands of production for 3 years that it kind of left us a bit burnt out.
And was that slightly counterintuitive? Because if you'd already found a winning formula and it was working, and if you had the opportunity to keep trundling out something that was proven to be successful, was that quite a big decision to make, to stop doing that and to go back to your roots?
It was really scary, but it was the right decision for all sorts of reasons. It was a right decision for us as individuals, for our families, for our mental health, for our ability to be able to continue long term. I think strategically it was the soundest decision that we've made to date, because we're now ready. We now know what is entailed in production of that scale. We aren't going to look into it just saying, I know, Paul, yeah, oh, we can do that, because that was our mantra for the first 3 years. We were going to say yes to everything and figure it out afterwards, which was great, but it took a lot out of us. So that was the defining moment for our company, and it was the best decision that we made.
And was that an easy decision to make? I mean, presumably there were a number of individuals involved in that who maybe didn't all agree at the outset. Is that fair to say? Who maybe saw things slightly differently?
Well, it was tricky because we had staff, and we had to say to them, look, we're going to stop here. We've, basically the contract that we gave you, it's going to finish on this date, and here are the reasons why. Thanks a million, and we hope you understand. So that was hard.
Yeah. That
was hard, but it was also the most honest way for us to deal with people, and we gave them as much notice as we could. And we just didn't want to be servicing this thing which didn't fuel our passion anymore. Do you know?
Right. That's a big decision, and I suppose a brave decision. Have you Renee, I mean, you
Same
were nodding
experience,
there.
yeah. I think
Strike a
that's-
chord.
Yeah, I think lead to grow should be maybe reframed as lead to grow, contract, because that's what I have had to do. And Remco talked about telling his kids about why they should go to university or not. I think education has a big part to play in taking a step back and reevaluating why you're doing things, how you're doing them, and just focusing your mind on the theory behind an element, whatever that may be, of what you're involved in. So that's what I did with one of my businesses a couple of years ago. I took what was then seen as a mad decision to shut it down, and I had to let staff know that they were no longer required, which was the hardest part of the whole thing, and move forward with a new direction for the idea that I had was a good idea, and it was a kind of a success, if you like, from a financial perspective. The accountant questioned why I was closing, but mentally it wasn't a success, emotionally it wasn't a success, and I think that's also a difference as well. Remco works for an enormous company, but when you have a company that is your company and you're the owner and you're the leader, and people have their kind of focus on you and they see you as this superwoman hero who can do everything, and you're going home at night wondering, are the 10 minutes I have to finish my dinner before I have to go back to the laptop really worth it? That's how much work you have to put in whenever you live and work in a small place like this. So there are all those kind of issues that you have to assess. So I decided to just take a step back from all of that, and I'm at Queen's University at the minute doing some research, and I think that being able to decide as an individual what's best for you and what's best for your organisation and is the least damaging to your organisation and to the people and the humans that you're dealing with, that's a kind of a leadership aspect in itself, and knowing that you can contract and take a step back and and find yourself again, and that no one died. You haven't died. Businesses start and businesses stop, and as long as no one dies, I suppose that's okay. So you can start again, closing something or stopping something or reframing it or reorganizing how something works is as important as starting it and having the idea in the first place. So yeah, I concur with the and the mental health aspect as well with Nuala. You have to be able to make sure that everyone is okay. If you're a good leader, you will make sure that everyone is okay. And if it's your business, then that means you have to make sure that you're okay.
The challenge there, of course, is that an employee's definition of being okay is probably to continue having that job. That's where it gets potentially gets complicated.
Well, I think if you have empowered them enough on the journey, I think if you have worked with people, in everything I do, and there are people here that know me, I'm a very open communicator. I don't not talk. I talk. And I talk to my staff, and I talk to my colleagues, and I talk to my clients, and I talk to people here in different levels within Queen's. I talk to professors and my peers in classes, and I talk to everyone in the same way, and I think, and at the same level, and I respect everyone's knowledge, and I think that's really quite important. So you understand them as a person, you understand their own the conditions around their lives, and if what you're doing is as a leader is going to have a detrimental effect, and you make sure you put something in place to support them through that. So a couple of times I've had to, not just within my own business, but within an organisation that I was on the board of, I had to let 4 very valued staff who'd been there for a very long time know that they were no longer going to be required, and the company was having to merge, and their contracts weren't going to be continued. That was a really tough thing to have to do, but I made sure that those people were surrounded by support afterwards, and helped them through references and different things to find other positions that had more sustainability for them. So I think just being a conscious, kind, caring human has an awful lot to do with being a leader.
Yeah. No. it can be something similar, it can be something completely different. What was the biggest challenge or the biggest crisis that you have faced in a leadership role?
So because I'm in a startup, right, you have to do, and it's my first time as a CEO, I'm learning everything for the first time. And I suppose the biggest challenges for me have been settling into this journey. And having that faith in myself that, you know, when you're the first time at doing something, you always defer to other people who've done it before, and you take confidence from their experience, and sometimes that works, and sometimes that doesn't work. And the challenge for me was when one of my staff members was getting too stressed about what we were trying to do, and when we're mental health, that defeats the whole purpose. If somebody is, you know, trying to build products to help early intervention and they're getting stressed. And, you know, we had a very open and honest conversation about it, because I suppose when I worked for other people and the experiences that I had, I realised how you should treat people when they're working for you. Having faced redundancies, having faced bad leaders, good leaders, I just felt that from the outset we were going to be transparent. We had a certain amount of money to get us a certain way, you know, a certain runway, and that's what they were signing up to. And also accepting the fact that I have made a commitment to be a startup founder. This hasn't been thrust upon me. I'm not going to moan about how difficult it is, because I have chosen this as my commitment to my career development. And as a startup founder, you have to listen to feedback as you go along, but you also have to stay true to the North Star. And I suppose not one day is the same. There's ups and there's downs, but this is my choice. So I take confidence from that, and also from the people that I'm helping. So when I started out, perinatal mental health was not widely known by a lot of people. I had questions asked, is this just not something that all women face? Well, no, it's not. 1 in 4 women develop mental health in pregnancy. The number, you know, a quarter of women who die in that 1 year pre and post die from suicide. You have fathers who experience them. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people every single year in the UK. That was the biggest challenge at the start, people believing that there was an illness. And then you have the stigma associated with it. So I have, really been educating a lot of people, working with the Ulster University down at Jordanstown, an amazing team there to validate every single process, because when you have the evidence, people then believe you. You know, it's not just me telling a story. And so the challenges of people not believing the illness, not believing you can do what you're setting out to do, not believing who you're surrounding yourself with, not believing in you, you've got to a certain stage just believe in yourself. And so I was less harsh on myself. I've settled into who I am, like Remco said. I know who I am, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm trying to achieve, and the people I'm helping are proof of that. So I have to focus on the things that I'm good at, that I'm proving, as opposed to the things that are challenging me every single day, because I will overcome those eventually because of the amazing support and people that I have around me. So the challenges are only opportunities to learn, I suppose.
Okay, Ashley, similar experiences to what we've heard so far, or anything completely different?
Quite similar in a way. I mean, I think running any business, particularly a startup, is really managing a succession of crises. And the bigger ones are the ones that get your attention, and I think part of the job is to manage that uncertainty. You share stuff that you can deal with, and other stuff you have to keep to yourself. It isn't the appropriate time to deal with it. In terms of our journey, the point when we were closest to the wire, I suppose, was we had a financial tool which showed us the runway, how much cash we had left to keep the company going, and we were down to a few months, and we were trying to structure a deal with a large American company, and we had the big phone call with the top guy in this company, and this was going to solve it. And about halfway through the call, it became apparent that things were not going well. And the phone call finished, and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, it's just not going to be possible to do anything," and put the phone down. And I remember looking at the other guys in the room at the time, thinking, "What do you do now? A couple of months' money left, and it's over." So, one of the other guys actually said, "Well, look, it's not over. There's somebody we can phone here. I know somebody else in the company that is not the decision maker, but has a degree of influence." Picked up the phone, got him on the phone, mobilised him, he warmed to the idea, and eventually we got a deal. In retrospect, not a very good deal, but a deal that was sufficient to keep us going at the time, and a deal that we were subsequently able to extract ourselves from, and I refer to it as that deal. But at the time, it was necessary. So I guess one of the learns that sometimes you've got to do stuff you don't really want to do, but you just got to do it to get through, and keep your integrity and keep going. So that's the time when we were closest to the wire, and thankfully that seems a long time ago now. We're in a different era.
But that's a steep learning curve, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but you know what? We all face these situations, don't we? Personally as well. I mean, this isn't something that you've never had to deal with before. Everybody has crises and problems in their life, and you know that moment when it becomes black and white, and you have been forced into a terrible situation, and you just got to deal with it. And I think there's, you know, business is a lot like life, really. It's, you know, the two are in some ways are similar. Yes, there's a slightly different skill set to be had, but you bring those personal assets that you have into a business, and you learn how to deal with things. I mean, if you spoke to even a young person, you know, one of your children, and I'm sure they could tell you about terrible, terrible moments they had. It's all about perspective.
René, did you?
I was just going
do
to
you
pick
wanna
up on that you took the deal and found a way through, and I've worked in businesses where I've been offered a deal, and my own business that I closed in 2016, there was an opportunity to just continue, but it would have meant making a huge change in the concept and the vision of that business. And that's something that I wasn't willing to, that's an adaptation that I wasn't willing to make. Basically, it was a Brexit-orientated issue that the pound dropped, and 80% of our supply was euro and coming from the south. And I would have had to change my buying ethos and buy from UK-based businesses. And I just wasn't happy to do that. I wanted to represent Irish craft, and I decided not to take the offer that was given to me to keep going, but to buy more from the UK and have a business that represented more UK makers. I didn't see the same amount of market for it, to be honest, but I also didn't feel as invested in it. And I think the point I'm making is that there are opportunities to save businesses for business sake, but you know, and to adapt and change and take different routes and journeys for the business's sake. But it depends on how invested you are in your vision or in your initial idea. So, you know, that's a decision that only you can make if it's your own business. So, and I think that has to be allowed. I think you have to allow yourself to make that kind of fundamental decision as well. You know, that actually I'm not willing to compromise my initial idea. I don't want to do that for the sake of the business.
There are other things I want to talk to you about, but I'm mindful of the fact that there may be points that you want to pick up on or tease out generally, or as far as specific individuals are concerned. I don't know if do we have microphones or not? We do or we don't? We do. We've a couple of microphones, one on either side. So does anybody want to dive in at this point? I'm very open to somebody else helping me along if you want to. I don't want to hog the thing, although there's plenty more we can talk about. But is there anything, is there somebody just right at the very back in the middle? We'll get a microphone to you, unless you want a gulder, but maybe we'll get you a microphone. Just about, is it Camilla? Yes. Hi Camilla, how are you doing? Oh, there's a mic just coming. There you are.
Thanks. Well, then that saves me shouting. Thank you. I think it's fab to have such a great panel with us today, so thank you all very much for your time, and Ashley particularly for jumping in at the last minute. I think that's always very generous of you to give your time. One thing, Fionnuala, the reason I really did want to grab this mic is she never told us about the Netflix deal with 40 different territories and how many different languages. That's the bit that you kind of left out of your description of all of the things that you've achieved at Dog Ears. So I think that's pretty amazing. I suppose it underpins a lot of what you're talking about. We have heard a lot about the challenges in leadership, and my question is a little bit akin to the brilliant success of Dog Ears and in fact all of your companies that you've had over the time. Like, what are the great moments where you think it is brilliant to be the head of this company? You know, have you got any of those standout moments where you went, do you know what, this was the day that I was born to do this?
See, that's the difference. I always look for the crisis, isn't it?
As a
Camilla,
political
you have
interviewer,
redeemed
yeah.
me. Thank you. That was Jane Taggart. She told me to ask that question.
Well,
okay, so there are crises and challenges, but Camilla is, of course, 100% right. There are those wonderful moments where things go very well. Well, let's just start on that. I mean, the Netflix deal that you didn't talk about.
No, I didn't talk about it. Thanks,
yeah.
Camilla, for keeping me on my toes.
Is that one of those standout moments?
Absolutely, it was huge, absolutely huge for us. Well, the first one, the thing that changed our lives, I suppose, in the last 5 or 6 years was we had a concept for Puff and Rock, and we were at a conference, children's media conference in Sheffield, and there were all of these, fast pitching opportunities. And we had been developing the idea ourselves, first of all, so we had made a book. We were going to self-publish a book and self-publish an app for the world, basically the Puff and Rock world. And we decided we'd go and do one of these speed pitching sessions, completely unprepared, to a guy from Penguin Random House at the time. And he said, if you do have a pitch, please don't waste my time, and can you please be organised? So we had got the proofs of our book, which we had sent to China to go and get printed, and we had made an app. John had taught himself how to program and make apps. So this was all very homemade, DIY approach. And at this pitching session, he said, okay, so, what's your project? And we showed him the proofs of the book. And it was just a moment, one of those moments in life. And he had this really visceral response. He said, do you know, Penguin, we have got 2 imprints. We have got Ladybird books and we have got Puffin. And for years we've been looking for a brand which could possibly rejuvenate the Puffin brand. And I think this is it. We're sort of sitting looking at him going, right, okay. He says, so what have you done? He says, well, we're doing this book ourselves and we've made an app. And I said, can I please just ask you not to do it? And don't launch it. Don't publish it. We're going to be your publisher. And you're making a TV show and we'll invest in that too. And we were running to get our bus, and we were like, but we have to take the proofs back because they were £150. And he was okay. So that was one moment. And then after that, within 6 weeks, we were meeting Penguin in Dublin, and we'd signed a contract with them. So Puff and Rock is a 3-way partnership between Dog Ears, Cartoon Saloon, and Penguin Random House. That was a moment, and them getting into production, and then halfway through the first series, we pitched it to Netflix in Miami at Kidscreen, and they loved it and said, okay, great, we'll buy this, and we'll buy it worldwide, and it'll become a Netflix original in any other territory in which you haven't already broadcasted. So it's a Netflix original in most of Western, America, Canada. In fact, it's only not released in 2 countries in the world, and that's Korea and Syria, which is insane, which we made in Derry.
It's very impressive. You've set the bar quite high there, I have to say, for the other 3 people on the panel. But Ashley, the stage is yours.
I can't compete with that at all. I'm happy every time we sign a sales contract. And we've recently spun out a new product, which we have 3 contracts for over the last few months. We're really excited about that. We think it could be a breakthrough product for us. So smaller steps than yours, but keep us happy.
Yeah, but nonetheless significant for the company. I suppose that's the point. That those moments are terribly important, and they balance out the moments that you maybe want to forget about.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's incremental. Yeah. Sometimes you don't realise until you look back the direction you're travelling, how far you've come, and maybe we should celebrate the moment. I don't know what you did to celebrate, but maybe we should celebrate these moments more on the way through.
Involved a lot of alcohol.
Nuala.
From both hats that I wear, so the journey that I'd mentioned earlier on about Lean in Belfast started out with 4 women in a coffee shop and has turned into 3,500 women across Belfast and Dublin. In January this year, the founder, Sheryl Sandberg, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, came to Dublin, and we celebrated what we've achieved across the island of Ireland, and I got to interview her, which was just surreal. That was a personal recognition for what I have been able to do with amazing other leaders, and I know there's some up this part of the country who are growing at great guns too. Last year I was nominated by people I don't know on different lists, I suppose, from the Sunday Times Maserati 100 to the company as the top 100 startups in the UK. And that came out of people who are around me seeing what I'm trying to do. So I've been compared to trying to push a piece of string up a hill for the kind of mountain I'm trying to climb with Moment Health. But that was a big recognition for me. And then I won Digital DNA Entrepreneur of the Year last year. So again, they weren't me putting myself in. Other people had nominated me without me knowing. And for that, I think that's, as well as the women that we've been able to help and potentially save lives, that's enough for me. I do enjoy the journey though, because there's more ups and downs, and I'm just about to sign my first sales contract for an employer. So when that happens, I will be celebrating big time. So
Good. Right. Well done. René?
Yeah, our landscape architecture practice gives kind of tangible results. So being able to walk along a path, for example, the most recent Belfast-based project that we've worked on is at the back of the Titanic building. There's a new Titanic walkway that walks down to the Great Light. That's one of our projects. And being able to walk along the path and, you know, have other people there with you enjoying the space is really always very rewarding. Getting repeat work is also a real kind of, you know, when a client calls again, when you finished and signed off a project and then the client gives you, you know, the phone rings and the client calls again is always a real pat in the back. But I think personally what I get most fulfillment from is working with craftspeople, people who make products or make pieces, and then to go on and sell them. And I have one funny story where I'm very good friends with most of the people whose work I represent, and I go to their studios and watch them making. And I have a friend who makes terracotta cups and crockery and pottery and pieces of kitchenware that's very functional, more so than, you know, gallery level. And I was in my store a few years ago, and a couple of people came in, one with an English accent and a guy with an American accent, and they kind of chatted among themselves, picked stuff up. They clearly had plenty of money. They weren't looking at price tags. Filled their arms. We didn't have baskets. We weren't that kind of store. Filled their arms with things, came to the counter, and the girl asked me, do you have anything with dragons on it? And I said, no, I don't think so. Might have a children's book with a dragon on it in the book section, but I don't think so. But I was looking at what she was buying. I looked at what everyone bought, and I love, you know, putting together. Now we're online, I like putting together people's purchases and what they've chosen and how they've pulled the things together and what they might be going to do with the things. But I was looking at her work and thinking, oh, she's bought lots of Helen's cups. She must really like that, and a few other bits and pieces. And put all the stuff in the bags, and off they went together. They kind of had a bit of laughing among themselves, the two of them, but off they went. And the people behind them in the queue said to me, you did not know who that was, did you? And I said, no. And they know that I didn't know who they were. Who were they? And it was Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones. And I suddenly realised that there are some negatives in not watching TV, and that was one of them. But yeah, that knowing people, knowing what they do, and being able to represent them, and for them to then feel the kind of benefit of that, and for me to be the person to give them a call again and say, can you restock that shelf, that for me is very fulfilling.
I'm sure that went down very well with the supplier when you explained who.
Well, I don't even know if I've actually told her I definitely told her that I didn't know who they were, but I just told her I was so engrossed in, you know, the whole experience, and yeah, I think I was. I should probably make it clear that they were definitely her cups, but there's some pieces of jewellery as well, and, you know, she just went for it and filled her bag and off she went. It was fantastic. It was the first Sunday that we'd ever opened, actually, and these are the two first customers that we'd had of the day, and it was a kind of affirmation that opening on Sunday was a good idea, but they never came back. So
Not yet. Very good. Camilla, thank you. That's that was a line I wasn't particularly going to pursue, so thank you very much indeed. Let's here we go. Just over to my right. Leo is charging down with a microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Debbie Reimer. Ashley, I have a question for you. Remco, you had talked about trust in yourself and trust in other people around you. And so my question for you was around that investment and, you know, and trust in that decision. You became an investor in the company, and what was it about them and maybe their leadership that not only inspired you but inspired trust in them?
The spotlight's just got brighter. I invested in the company because of the people. I understood property from a property background. I understood the concepts of what they were engaged in, what they were trying to do, but I was struck by the energy and commitment of the people in the business. And it was even more a start-up then than it is now, but I could see that there was something there. It's an intangible thing, really. It's, it wasn't on the spreadsheet. I suppose the financials weren't that strong, but there was just something about it. And I thought these are people who are really committed here. They have talent and they have energy, and they are going to pursue this. And it was that, I suppose, allied with the fact that it was an area that I knew something about. And I thought I'd been involved with the university in prior years, and indeed with this company. I was involved in the science park back at the start when we were trying to spin that out, and we're trying to get the university to be more interested in commercialising IP than just writing academic papers, and did a study trip to North America and saw the research triangle and those places. And out of that started the journey to try and identify activities and potential companies within the university that were capable of being made into companies. Now, I was a non-executive director. As part of that, I agreed to become a non-executive director of a couple of companies, and this company, Causeway Data Communications, as they were then, were one of these companies. So I suppose before I made the investment decision, I had a ringside seat for 18 months or so and saw what they were doing and the progress that could be made. And then my term was up, and I went off, and the guys continued. And then about 3 or 4 years later, they were doing a funding round, and they came back, and they had an offer from a venture capital company, and I took a look at that and said, well, don't take that, I'll take it. So I decided at that stage to invest. So that's been a great decision at times, and at other times it didn't look so great, but it's in a very good shape now. So that was really the background to it, Debbie.
But that's interesting, yeah, because at the end of the day, it was about people, is the point, rather than numbers on the paper. Yeah.
Yes, well, I suppose in every business, particularly in our business, things change at a pace. There's a huge degree of uncertainty out there. So what is true? The product that you're working on at the minute may not be the one that you're working on tomorrow, and that the constant in this is the people. And if you have the right people and the right team who are committed, you can get through tomorrow. Whereas if you're basing it solely on something that's true today, that is likely to change. I think that the pace of change is only going to increase. And I think, therefore, the people in the company become ever more important. And the days of, I think even the FTSE stock exchange, the number of companies that actually have been there for any length of time is decreasing. So what is important in a business? What is going to drive it? What is going to let you deal with the problems of tomorrow? And that's the people in the business, because that is the only thing you can work with. Everything else, to a certain extent, is outside your control.
Just curious, don't want to get bogged down in this hugely, but it is interesting because it's just moves off the what we're discussing, which is about people. And I'm just wondering, are there role models that you have deliberately looked towards, either individuals you know and have worked with, or people you maybe don't know on a global scale who've inspired you to approach leadership in a certain kind of way? Phil, is there a person or a few people who just immediately spring to mind?
The big one for me would be Ida Tin, who is the founder of the Clue app. And it's really, there's a theme with everything I do. It's about female empowerment and female enablement, okay? So this is in the femtech space. She coined the phrase a few years ago. She built an app that helps women track their menstruation cycles and empowering women with that information to be able to make health decisions about them. And the way she's gone about both building her company, building the product, creating the community around her, and also the protection of data and people's data around that, I think is totally inspirational. And then we have, you know, a close contact of mine who is Sarah Farr, the CEO of Nextdoor, what she's done, coming from Sion Mills in Northern Ireland, going to Silicon Valley, and she's just joined a startup herself. So it just shows you at different stages of your career, anybody can take risks, but and so that for me is inspirational. Strong female role models.
Okay. Fionnuala?
There's one company and one person. So Cartoon Saloon are an incredible company. Whenever we partnered with them, they were just so generous in sharing their expertise and their skills. And their managing director is a man called Jerry Sheeran, who is not the creative one, if you know what I mean. So they have a board of, I think there's 4 artists, creatives at the heart of their company, and they drive everything that happens. But Jerry he's like the master puppeteer, he's the facilitator, and he allows them to be their absolute best. And he makes them feel secure and in control, and he has a policy of, which I love, and I try and think about it all the time, of no surprises, a management of no surprises, that you know what you need to do, everybody feels confident, everybody feels calm and reassured and supported in the role. So Jerry, and he mentors me a lot, even in a sort of very informal way. He's been a great help for dog ears since we set up. So Jerry and Cartoon Saloon are massive. And my daddy, just watching my dad and his life, and honestly, you know, the decisions that he made and how he interacts with people, and you know, he was a man of his great vision and courage, and those people.
That's good. You know, I don't want to say opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's somebody that you know and know very, very well, and somebody on a much bigger stage. And it's interesting that they both bring something different, but also something similar to play. So, René, any one individual or a couple of individuals who immediately spring to mind?
I'm really bad at remembering people's names.
You're like me.
So there are very many women who work in craft and craftswomen over the years who also do lots of other things. You know, I'm inspired by people who do lots of things, who get involved in lots of areas of the things that influence them. They get involved. That's the kind of person who I'm interested in hearing about, reading about, or meeting. Someone who, you know, regardless of whether it's something that you've trained to do, whether you went through a kind of formal direction in or not, if you're interested in it and you're involved in it, then I want to get to know you. I think that, you know, I'm not a big couch person. I don't sit on a couch much. I'm very busy, and I like being busy, and I like being surrounded by other people who are also busy, and they're just involved. You only live once, and I know it's a complete cliche, but you really are only here once, and there really is not an awful lot of time for sitting around and not doing stuff. So, you know, I really do enjoy holidays as well, but again, I go and see as much as I can, and I just fill my life, and I find inspiration from other people who fill their lives as well with as much inspiration and as much travel and as much exposure to the things that they're interested in as they can.
Okay. Ashley?
No, I don't have role models. I don't look for that. I'm a great believer in ideas. And whoever has a relevant idea or an exciting idea, you know, I would listen to that. I wouldn't glamorize individuals. I do believe that you really do need to keep an open mind. And my father actually had a saying. He would say to me when I was coming to him with some new idea or whatever, he'd say, "Look, my mind's made up. Don't confuse me with the facts." So I think, you know, that would be my approach. You know, it's about ideas, and people that espouse those ideas I will listen to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have about 10 minutes or so before we're going to break and have a coffee. So a few hands. We'll take a few quick questions. There's someone over here, and there's...
Hi Mark, how are you? I'm Alistair. I was chatting with my head in marketing earlier, Jake the Tractor, and he was wondering, what's more important, the metrics or the purpose?
Okay. Thank you. Anybody want to dive in on that? Anybody got it? Ashley?
Purpose. Metrics are a measurement. and you have to be measuring the right things, but that assumes that you've got the purpose correct.
Everybody's nodding. Yes, agree. There you go. There's a straight answer to a straight question. I like that. I'm very unused to this idea. There's a lady just in the middle. There you go. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Garvin. Something that's coming through to me from listening to all four of our guests this morning is the dilemma, and I think the dilemma starts with the title, Lead to Grow. And we've heard about people having wonderful ideas, having the courage to take them forward, and building their companies and getting there. But there comes a point, I think, in a lot of companies where there's a decision to be made, do I want to grow? And I think, particularly for René, we've heard about the stresses, the mental stresses of coming in and always having to work and maybe not having a good life balance. So I would ask, how would you address that issue, the will to want to grow, to get it, but if you get it to a level where you're comfortable, where you can still have a good life balance, do you then have to look to somebody else to take it forward, or do you say, well, actually, I'm happy where I am, I'll keep getting on top of things within the ideas that I have, but actually I don't want to employ 20 more people. I don't want to do something. So I think there's a dilemma. Do you always want to lead to grow, or do you want to lead to go to the stage where you're comfortable in your own space? And how would the panel view that?
Yep. René, do you want to talk? You touched on it a little bit,
Yeah.
I think, in some of your opening comments. Do you want to just develop that?
Yeah, the most sustainable part of what I do is within our architecture practice. So it has kind of contracted to a staff of no more than 5 or 6 at any one time, and then it has grown to that size, and then we have contracted at times when, after the Celtic Tiger and the bust, we had very little work, so we had to reduce again and then grow again when things got better. We have no ambition to be a large architecture practice. That was never the vision. The vision was always just to be a very good quality landscape architect with a hope to make better landscape architecture decisions and results. I agree. I think Lead to Grow is a fantastic idea, that a leader can help a business grow. But I also think there's a lot of people in businesses who don't want to be leaders, and they you come up with an idea, and within that you end up being the leader, and a reluctant leader is a whole other morning's worth of discussion. They may end up being a bad leader, or they could actually be fantastic but don't really want that position. I think the whole concept of leadership is then wrapped up within the notion of business and direction. And you can put the term lead and growth together when you're discussing business, but what you're actually really looking at is business and direction. So you may not want to grow, you may not want to lead. You may be very good at getting other people to do those things within your organisation, and that's a lucky happenstance, really. But I don't know if everyone who starts a business sets out with the idea that it's going to become, a 50, 60, 70 employee organisation. I don't think that everyone does. Some people do have those kind of aspirations, and others don't. We certainly didn't, and it has, for us, worked out pretty well. That we're 20 years in now, and we have repeat clients, we have new clients, and we have good work that we're proud of. So, we've grown, and gone grey, and we've.
But you're not looking for world domination.
No, never have been. So, and I think some organisations are more in need of visibility than others as well, and I think that's something that nowadays. There's an expectation that you will be all over social media. You'll have, you'll be contactable, in any way, shape, or form. That's not necessary either. There's a whole lot of things that are happening, and no one knows anything about them other than the people who are benefiting from the service. And I think that has to be accepted as okay as well. Those businesses are also being led, and they are also growing, but they're not visible. They're not, they're not household names or that kind of thing. So. I think there's a whole lot more discussion that we probably could have on the concept of leadership and growth.
Fionnuala, did you specifically want to come in, or?
Yeah, for us, growth was the decision. We might have scaled down slightly in our staff, but we decided to invest in the growth of our own IP. And in order to do that, we needed to consolidate and to get back to our core group again and to really think creatively. And, you know, we're in the business of making stories for children. And you can't do that if you're trying to service doing an ad. Do you know, it's the two things for us didn't fit. So as much maybe to the outside world, it looked as though things were, you know, getting worse. Oh God, what's happening with dog ears? We made the choice, actually, we're going to have fun again, because that's what this company is about. That's why we want to do it. Do you know, we're making cartoons for kids. You know, it's not supposed to be that hard. It's not supposed to be not unfun. So we had to go back and find that space again. So it might have looked as though, oh God, what's happening? But actually, it was a very, very solid decision to invest in that type of growth.
Okay, did I see one more hand up there? I saw one hand, and I think I'll just maybe make that the last question, because I'm mindful we're going to knock things back as far as coffee and so forth is concerned. Yeah.
Hiya. I'm an entrepreneur trying to start. I'm in a startup stage. I'm in prototyping stage, and I know in the future I'm going to need to delegate responsibilities. Like at the moment, I'm going to be doing everything from talking to the customer to manufacturing to seeing it out the door. How do you trust? We were talking a lot about trust. How can I trust other? How can I get other people in that sense?
Well, put them in a position where you know they're going to work on your behalf, but trust them to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
If there was a silver bullet to that, then everybody would be running global empires, I guess. Who wants to take that on? Is there a quick answer to that?
Yeah, well, from
Nuala?
the starting point, it's about communication, right? So, who you choose to take on the responsibilities you're willing to, you know, let go of. It's about communicating with them, but also giving them the space to bring their ideas, because they will have ideas too, and sometimes that won't be in line with yours, but it could be better because you're bringing someone in as an expert to help you get to the next stage. So you have to get over yourself a bit, and you have to let go, and feel, you know, there's the feel fast, but you need to learn from the different stages and create that environment where people can help you achieve your mission, but you need to let go and learn how to do it well.
I'll tell you what, it leads me on to a final question, which I think might be quite revealing as well, and it's very much connected to this. And it's just, if you had 2 or 3 things very quickly that you would point to in terms of what you're looking for when you're recruiting within your business, what would they be? Because that is about trusting people. It's about putting the right people in place to grow the business on your behalf. Ashley, what are the 2, 3 things at the most that are top of your list when you're bringing somebody else on board?
I think in terms of a skill set, it's not so much what you know now, but what you can learn going forward in technology. Things move very fast. So just because you're really good or an expert in one thing doesn't mean that's necessarily applicable tomorrow. So it's the ability to learn going forward. And in terms of personality, of course, somebody who you feel can fit in with the team and will be open and honest as part of that team. And do you know what? It's a hard thing to get right. You never know after you recruit somebody whether they're actually a good fit, and you can do all the interviews and all the rest, but it's only after you work with somebody for a while you realise if they're a good fit. And you know that period can be 6 to 12 months till you fully understand that person and see that they fit with the needs of the company. So it's not an easy one, but you've got to keep going. And then when you get the right people, you know, it's transformational.
And you need to then hold on to them. That's a whole other story, isn't it? René, a couple of things.
Number one at the minute for me is looking at working with people and keeping the idea of diversity at the forefront of my mind. I think there is, I'm not criticising it, but there is a current kind of theme around finding your tribe. I'm not sure I agree necessarily with the concept of that. I think if you find lots of people who are the same, you're going to end up in a bit of a sheep pen with lots of people following along and doing the same thing. I very much like the idea of finding your tribe but keeping the gates open and making sure that it is a very diverse tribe to begin with. And having people from all different types of background within your organisation, you know, it really does mean that you have an opportunity to learn. I think from my perspective, working in a managerial or leadership role, I don't want to ever be perceived as someone who knows all the answers. I want other people to give me answers to things, and for me to be able to ask questions and for them to give me another view or another idea of how we could go about doing something. I don't want to be the person that has to come up with all the answers all the time. So finding people who are going to be confident enough to put forward their answers, or empowering them that they feel that they can do that, is a key aspect for me. And finding people who are happy. I mean, I'm a kind of generally mostly pretty happy person, and I want to work with other people who are pretty happy. So, you know, part of creating a workplace that environment's able to blossom in is my responsibility, I suppose. But if people are generally happy, then, you know, you can enjoy your week. So happy people who are diverse and coming from different backgrounds and different mindsets is my focus.
Okay. Now look, when you've been recruiting, when you are going to be recruiting, what are you looking for?
I think it goes without saying they have to be qualified to do the job, but separately aligned to our vision and our, you know, our purpose-driven mission in this world to create a company that is both successful but also creates impact on a bigger scale. So they need to be aligned with the vision and mission of the company.
Right. Okay. And last but not least.
Mostly whenever we're recruiting people, it's for very specific roles, you know, very, you know, creative type people, artists, writers, whatever it might be. And as well as being qualified for the role, we always look for people who can demonstrate that they sort of have a DIY attitude, and that they can demonstrate that they've done that themselves. You know, if they say, I'm a fantastic storyboard artist. Okay, so what storyboards have you made, which you're not getting paid to do, maybe elsewhere? Show me your passion. That's something that we've always said to people. And I always say to students, if we're out doing sessions in universities and stuff, it's great to have your qualifications, it's great to have your skills. But if you are really interested in the creative industry sector, show me. Just don't make it because I had to do my coursework. You know, that has to be driven by a genuine passion for the area, that's it. So we look for that passion in people. Okay.
Look, I think we'll park it there. I hope you have found that over the course of the last hour useful. We've covered an awful lot of ground. Panellists are going to stick around and happy to chat to you on a one-to-one basis. We're going to take a break now for tea, coffee, and a chance to talk to the panellists and talk to each other. That coffee is taking place in Mocha Dining, which is, if you go out the door of the theatre, it's across the terrace, but people will direct you. And when you're there, you will see the exhibitors who've come along today with their various stalls. So look out for Intertrade Ireland, Digital Catapult, Northwest Regional College, fresh from their big award success within the last 24 hours, Women in Business, Enterprise NI, and Causeway Chamber of Commerce. So they'll all be there where you're having your tea and coffee. We're back, ready to go with the next stage. We're going to hear from Carice and from Paul Moore. Bit of a knowledge boost for you, and that is at 10 to 12. So if you could, the ideal thing would be to be back in 25 minutes, ready to go again. So thank you, and thank you again to the panellists.